Okay, here are all the items that came with the kit. First of all, the Flex-a-lite 282 fan setup. You can see it there. And then of course we've got two L-shaped brackets. And these are going to go on the side of the fan unit over here to help hold it. We got the top bracket. This one's nice and long. It's going to be what actually goes onto the top of it here, so it actually attaches to the truck. And these are two radiator hose brackets. These are going to attach, and this actually is going to have the radiator hose go across the top. And we got a bundle of wires here, so we can run our different wires. We got our controller unit, and this is what's actually going to control the fan at various speeds. And then we've got a bag of bolts and washers here. Look to be zinc coated. And then we got our bag of various crimp connectors, our big massive fuse, 30 amp fuse, some zip ties that will be used to attach everything. And of course we've got our instruction page here that we'll be using. And then got a, oops, things aren't working right, troubleshooting guide for the fan controller. And then we've got our Go Fast sticker that we can put on. This is what actually adds the 30 horsepower, you know. It's not the fan, it's this. So that's all the stuff that you actually get with the kit. Comes in a big giant box. Okay, here's some items you're going to need. Obviously some type of light, a drill, nice tool for the pulley system. You need some type of pliers, needle nose, some crimpers, some dikes, and just some different types of pliers. Definitely need some nice drill bits. Need a 10mm and a 9mm. Need some electrical tape. And you need a couple of extra set of screws or bolts and nuts. Need to have, if you want to, one of these quick wrenches to pull off your battery positive terminal. You can do it with some sockets if you want to, or a combination wrench. I like this though. 17mm, a 10mm, and an 8mm socket. Some type of an extension. I like my little wobble extension here. It works good and helps me get into weird places. Some type of a ratchet. And need a small flathead, a large flathead, a Phillips, and a test light. And that is all the equipment that you need to install this. Okay, so the first step is we're going to be removing the top of the radiator cover, and this is just a big plastic piece that covers the along the front grille and then on top of the frame above the radiator. For that, we're just going to use a really small flat-bladed screwdriver. Slide it up underneath, pull up gently, use your fingers as well, so you get it up about yay high. Don't pull it all the way out, and then gently pry up on the whole thing, and the whole clip comes out. And so what happens is whenever you push the clip in, it actually expands this out, which helps hold everything on. So you're just wanting to pull it up in the air like that. Make sure you set all your parts aside and keep them in the same area so you don't lose anything. If you have a parts container, you can certainly use a parts container. Okay, now in the instructions it says that you don't have to remove the intake plenum here. We are going to remove the intake plenum just because it makes it a heck of a lot easier. To do that, you can use an 8mm socket. Engine beauty plate you're going to have to remove also. and that's an 8mm socket. So this is just our clamp. Just loosen it up. That one's done. Then we come over here by the intake box. Here's our 8mm. We're just going to loosen this one up. And there we go. Pop our intake off on both sides. And the intake's popped off. Now right here, you've got a radiator hose clamp that you're going to have to remove as well. So for the radiator hose, it's just pushed on to the unit right here. So just hold on to it and gently pull out. And there you go. And there's your intake pulled off. Okay, so this is your top radiator hose. And it's got this weird funky clip that goes in like this, and you actually have to push in on it. There's a triangular hole down here. Slide your small screwdriver into the triangular hole and then work it towards this top and rotate your screwdriver into it. And as you rotate into it, the whole piece will pop up. And here you can actually see what I'm talking about the shape of it. So if you look right here, it's a funky little shape, and you had to push that part, actually squeeze it together to get it to come out. But the big problem is this silly area that you're working in here is real tight. So that's the way that it goes in, and you can see you got to squish it to get it to come through that hole. So anyway, that's how you get the upper radiator hose removed off the top of the fan shroud. And that's all you got to do from there. The upper radiator hose, you don't have to pull it off. You don't have to drain any fluid out of your cooling system. Just whenever you start working, you can just pull it up to the side. Okay. So the fan shroud is actually two different pieces. There's a top piece and there's a bottom piece. And they've got these little Christmas trees again, these little push pin type connectors that expand out, and you're going to have to remove all of those. Now the easiest way to get to these, because you can actually feel the bottom of it, is to take, once again, your flat screwdriver, your small flat blade, and push up underneath the bottom of it, and you can actually push that pin up and through like that, and then you can pull the whole unit out. Sometimes you got to squeeze a little bit on the bottom to get it out. There you go. It's another one of the same push pin type designs that as you push it through, it expands the bottom. Okay, so this pin right here, it's not actually a clip. As you can see, it's just a push pin through the bottom one that helps guide the top fan shroud on, so don't worry about pulling that one off. And now we move to the other side of the fan shroud to repeat the process. So now to finish removing the top fan shroud, this is our top connection point. We've got another one over here. And what we want is we want a 10 mil. Pop on the 10 mil and back out the bolt. And the same thing on this side. Alright, last step is we've got a hose right here that's connected. Just pop it out. It's just a simple connector. And as mentioned before, just push the upper radiator hose out of the way and remove the top fan shroud. And there we go. There's the old nasty top fan shroud. We will not be reusing the fan shrouds. These are going away. A year and a half ago, I had my water pump go out. The reason the water pump went out is because my fan clutch assembly went out. And whenever the fan clutch assemblies go out, it overworks the water pump and also doesn't allow your vehicle to get cool with the air conditioner. So I went to Napa. The only fan clutch that they had was a heavy duty. And this is my original fan blade, but the fan clutch itself down here is the heavy duty one. And the heavy duty one pulls an amazing amount of horsepower and torque away from the engine. You can definitely feel the difference going from an old regular fan clutch to this one. The biggest pain in the butt with this whole process though is actually removing this silly fan clutch. Chevy in their infinite wisdom decided to make it where this pulley just has 2 holes in it, 4 total, and there's these holes. Let me see if I can get it on camera. You can see the hole there, and there's another one over there. So there's both the holes. You can kind of see them down there. So anyway, what this does is it makes it an utter bear to remove this silly fan clutch. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to get a tool that actually connects on all those holes. There's 4 of them down there in order around it. They're all equally spaced, and then you're supposed to put a big wrench around that nut right there, and that nut's what's actually holding the fan clutch on. The problem is, no matter where I went in town, and I'm in a pretty big town of San Antonio, and no matter where I went in town, I could not find the silly tool by Chevy to remove that silly pulley from the nut. And it's not the nut that I'm worried about, it's the crazy holes right there inside that pulley. So anyway, what that resulted in is I made my own. So I've got this long piece here of just angle iron, and you know, this, you can find this thing at Home Depot. And what I did was I put 2 bolts through it and whittled down the bolts with the Dremel to make them just the right size to actually fit in. You can see all the cobwebs. I've saved this just because I figured the water pump would go out or the fan would go out, and my fan actually went out. That's how come I'm doing this. So this is my tool. Now here's the big old giant wrench that you use on the nut, and I got this from Napa, but the other tool that came with it did not fit because it didn't have these silly things. And Napa and AutoZone and Pep Boys and Advanced Auto, formerly Western AutoZone, or Western Auto, they had no clue what I was talking about whenever I talked to them about this type of tool to remove it. So I had to make my own. So if you need to make something similar, just make sure that it actually fits with inside the holes of the pulley. If you can find a tool in your local area, congratulations. I am very happy for you. Now to remove the fan. Okay, so now you can see how my tool actually fits down inside the pulley itself. The bolts slide through, and then we take our massive wrench, and we go down here and we untwist the big massive nut. And that's it. And then we just unspin it. Till it comes off. You can see that my tool gets all bent out of shape whenever I use it, but it works. As you can tell, there is no nut. There's no other way to grab it than through those 4 holes. So you either have to find the right tool or you have to make your own. Okay, the last step, we're going to be removing this lower fan shroud, and this is extremely easy to do. We just pop it up on this corner, pop it up on this corner, and pull the whole unit out. Being careful not to hit the radiator. And there's the lower fan shroud. And just like the top one, we're not going to be reusing this, so we just set it aside. Okay, now Flex-a-lite recommends that you mount it on the top of the unit, and this is the top of the unit here. Now for some reasons mine already came with holes drilled. I don't know if this was pre-used by somebody else. It's not supposed to be. It was supposed to be a brand new unit, and I see no defects. All of my products were actually in bags, so they may actually be coming now pre-drilled. I'm not sure. Straighten out the wires. Now this is going to go to ground, and this one's going to go to the battery. So those you're actually going to leave out. Now these two are going to supply power to the fans. So these are the two that we're going to send through the holes that are drilled. And we're going to take our unit, put it in position, use our black screws that come with it, and attach it to the fan. For this next part, we're going to have two butt connectors. But first, what we want to do is push our purple and yellow wires all the way through. And we're going to flip our whole unit upside down. First, we're going to take these wires that are over here on this fan, and we're going to send them through. There's a hole. You can see the hole right down here. Right there, and we're going to send those wires through that hole. Okay, so now we take the two black wires that we've got here, and we're going to spin them together. And we're going to put a yellow butt connector on it. Whenever you do it, actually spin the butt connector down on it the same direction that you spin the wires. We're going to take our crimpers, get whatever pair you like that do a good job for you, and we're going to crimp our connector. Now we're going to do the same thing with the red. So now we take our ends here and pull off the end of the wire here, and the yellow is going to go into the red, and the purple is going to go into the black. And then crimp. The last thing we want to do is we want to wrap these with some electrical tape. Now make sure that everything is going to be free and clear of the fans. You can see here that we're fine here, we're fine here, we're fine over here. Nothing's going to actually be able to get down to the fans. So now we're good. Now we've stood the fan assembly up. This is the top where you put the controller at. This is the front. It's going to be facing the radiator. This is the back, and the engine's going to be over here. So this is our top plate that actually connects the unit to the top of the chassis. You can see the shape here. That's the direction that it needs to go on. The reason it needs to go on that direction is because these clamps go up here, and that's going to give you a cradle to hold your radiator hose at the top. So for this, they provided us some bolts. It's a 10mm bolt. We just send it through the slot that's on here. Then we're going to send it through the holes that are at the top. So now we're going to attach our radiator hose clamps here in the middle. And again, all these are just safety to keep the radiator hose from coming down and actually hitting the fans. So the long part goes down, short part goes up. For now, I'm going to leave this entire assembly a little loose. Okay, so this is the side of the radiator fan. This is the top where we've attached our plate. This is where the radiator itself is going to be, and this is the engine side. So here are those side clips. You can see the shape there. And this one actually goes on this side. And now we repeat the process on the other side. Okay, so now we pull our radiator hose out of the way and lower the unit into place. Okay, so I'm really happy with the way that fits there. Now I know that they say to put these side brackets on after the fact. They're the ones that you saw me at the end after you put them in here. They say to put them in here, or after you put the whole unit to put these in here. But truthfully, that makes it really hard because you got to line these things up and push it in at the same time, and it's a big pain in the rear. So save yourself a headache and mount them ahead of time. Now we just put in our top bolts. Now we just go around and we tighten all of our bolts up. Be sure to tighten up your side brackets. And then we tighten up the brackets on the other side. Okay, so now we have to connect our negative and positive to the battery or to some type of large power supply. So we have black cable to black cable, and we're going to have a red cable to the red cable. So for now it's just typical butt connector work. I know the instructions say that the primary wire has to go to the battery terminal, but these battery terminals, which is what the Suburban used, do not actually allow the ring connector to sit very well down on the battery and do what it needs to do because they're side battery terminals, and the whole thing's just a big old giant mess. So I'm not going to hook it up here. What I'm actually going to do is, if you trace the primary back down, you will actually find that it comes back over to a power block over here, and it even says battery plus. So we open that up, and you can see that there is a nice lug right there on the unit that we can actually use to connect to power. Now this is our primary battery line coming in here. This is the one coming from the alternator. So plugging in here will give us the power that we require, and it's definitely direct enough with our primary wire that we don't have to worry about it. Now for the negative, what I'm actually going to do is right here on this cross member that's right on top of the battery, I'm going to connect it right here. I went ahead and wrapped this with electrical tape just to give it an extra layer of protection, and I'm actually going to zip tie it right here to the very top. So whenever we mount this, we want to go ahead and put our butt connectors on our fuse box here, our fuse holder, and then we're going to connect our positive here, but we need to find some place to mount this. Now you could mount it in line like this and zip tie it. I really don't like the way that looks. I want it to look professional, so I'm actually going to mount it right here on my box. Now this box has a ton of room on the inside, so I'm going to drill some holes, and I'm actually going to bolt this in. I put on my connector. I actually got a different connector, and I soldered it on. You don't have to, but I wanted something that was a little bit more beefy than what was here. I didn't really like that positive connection. Get a 17 mil socket and pop loose this nut. Now there's two different sides to the connector. There's a flat side and then there's a bump side. You want to have the flat side against the flat side of the other connector. So in other words, it goes on like this. The bolt goes through like that. So that's going to be the top where the nut goes. This is going to be the bottom side. Make sure your wire goes through the opening and close it. For the next part, we're going to be connecting a fuse. Now they've given us a few different connectors here. Let me put these down. This is the connector that's going to go onto the end of the fuse itself, or the end of the what we're adapting onto the fuse. So that's what that is. Now there's two different types here. We've got the old-fashioned fuse. Most older cars are going to use this one. It's the wider fuse, and then this is the skinny fuse. And let me show you a couple examples. This right here is one of the older, larger fuses that was used in the cars up until the mid-90s or so. And they stopped putting these in, and they started to put these in. These became more popular, and nowadays you can't find any cars with these in it anymore. They're all these micro fuses. And that one actually goes with this connector. Now if you have the old one, use this bigger one, it'll work just fine. But these, what you need to actually do, let me have my assistant hold the camera here. So you hold the fuse, and this has a little slot in it right there at the end, and you actually take the fuse, push it into the slot, and then snap it in, and that's the fuse holder. And that will get you your power off of your switched fuse. So put that back down, come over here. Now on the top right hand side of the Suburban, there is a nice fuse box that's right here. That's where we mounted our fuse holder, and we got it all cable tied up. But that's our fuse holder that we mounted. Now on top of this box is a whole bunch of fuses. Right here in the middle We got 3 15s. Now yours may vary. They may not be 15s. I've got a Z71 here, and they vary depending on what accessories you have. But any one of these 3 right here that you see, you can pull those out. Those are switched, and if you look over here on our diagram, it is that one, and that one. So those 3, and there's, they're going to vary. It even says down here that they vary depending on the functions of the vehicle. But any one of those you can pull out, and you can put your little connector on it and connect up your power supply. Okay, so here's my 15 amp fuse that I pulled, and you can see I got my little connector on it, and I'm just going to slide this back in here. And I opted to use the lower one that was by itself. Now you'll also notice that after I get this slid in here, and they're going to be a little snug. You got to kind of work with them a little bit to get them to go in there. But once I get it in there, you'll notice I put the lug on the right hand side away from this relay and away from everything else. There's a lot of room around it, so I don't have to worry about anything hitting on it. Okay, so here we go. Now on that connector, I had to actually crimp it down. I just grabbed a pair of needle nose, reached inside the connector and squished it down, and that's because it's going on a really small connector. I don't really like the connector that they gave us. It also doesn't even really fit down in the fuse panel holder, so I'm probably going to end up replacing it eventually. I'm not sure I like it. So anyway, I've got it taken and I've got it routed down through it. And so it's going to come out down here right by the fuse holder, and so I'm just going to route the wire right there along the positive and then come all the way back up and over to the controller. This next connection is going to be one of the most difficult connections you have to make. You have to take this piggyback connector. These things are pretty much hated by the industry, including myself, but it's going to take this job and actually make it manageable for me this evening. It's getting pretty late. We're going to take that along with this green wire right here. We're going to connect it to the positive side of the AC clutch. Now on the front of your engine, you got all your accessory belts that are coming across. This one up top, that's your alternator. You come down, that's your power steering pump right there. Of course, then you come back and you've got your water pump. Down there is the crank. That's the primary pulley off the crank. Then you come over here, that down over there is your AC. And that's your AC clutch that the pulley is actually connected to. Now, whenever you look down in here, you're going to have a connector. Let me see if I can get the camera down in here for you. You're going to have a connector right on the top of the AC unit. And you see the connector there. Now on that connector we've got 2 different wires coming out. We got a green and a black. The green wire is the positive, the black is the negative. So we need to connect it to the green side. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot of wire there for us to play with because it goes straight down the AC compressor right there. You can see the heat shrink tubing that's supposed to be covering it there. So that's going to be really fun to get to, but that's the connector we need to connect it to in order to complete this work. Okay, so I have the green wire run up on the underside, and then it comes up over to the VSS. Let me see if I can get it on the camera there. There we go. Now the green one goes in number 7 right here. 8 is skipped. We're not going to use 8. Number 9 is the switched from the fuse box. 10 and 11 are going to be the sensors for, or the sensor for the temperature probe. Now the temperature probe is going to go in right over here. You can see it right there at the top of the radiator. And you can also see it back over here. You can see I covered it with the black boot like you're supposed to. Alright, so now we're just putting everything back up. So we're going to put our radiator hose up. Make sure that this bottom radiator hose is clamped up like it's supposed to be on all of its stuff. put the fuse cover back on. So make sure that's good and tight. There we go. And then the main fuse. So that's the 30 amp fuse that they give you. Slide it in to the connector. Make sure it's in nice and tight. Close it up.